So I do think it depends on what the topic is. If it's fundamental to who you are, I think external support or external
just like many independent schools are also facing similar struggles. So is there any piece of advice that you want to give to another head of school who might be listening to this conversation?
At this grade, by this time, I want our rating to be at X according to whatever rating. It's very, very fundamental, and it keeps that North Star keeps me focused. So I would say, make your goals super concrete and tangible and measurable. Whatever they are, make them tangible and measurable.
Mandates for students to learn AI is still around the corner. I think most schools will have to do something about it for the academic year 26-27. But I think this year is more about capacity building internally, where teachers have to start using AI in their job to be more efficient, to be more productive. Hello guys, welcome to TomoClub Podcast series. I'm Avinash Bansal, co-founder at TomoClub. And today in our TomoClub series, we have the head of school at Summer Knoll School, Jonathan Letcher. And it's a very interesting topic about how the impending transformation of public and private schools is coming to an inflection point. And I'm very excited about this discussion. Welcome to the podcast, Jonathan.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be here. I follow you and think your work is great. So thanks for inviting me.
No, thank you so much. It's an honor, honestly, and I am very psyched about today's topic. But before we get into it, I would love to know, how did you get into education in the first place? What was your career snapshot, if you can share with our audience? And the reason that you joined education, is it still valid after so many years?
Well, the last part is a really intriguing question. My journey with that is kind of it was kind of preordained, because both sides of my family are educators in various forms, from superintendents to people who created their own schools, and teachers and specialists. And it was kind of hard not to have an opinion about education as a child, because I was surrounded by it so much, and from my family, and because I was kind of a loquacious kid who thought he thought a lot and but definitely had a lot of opinions. My wise grandmother said, "Well, if you have so many great ideas, why don't you become a teacher?" so and fix the world as you see fit. And so so that was kind of where that epiphany happened. And I taught for a number of years in public education, primarily public education, and then after several years of teaching, I went to administration in the public sector. But then I went internationally with my family, and saw the world, experienced the world, and just fell in love with a variety of cultures and people from around the world, but also seeing the through line between what their aspirations were for themselves and for their children, and what education, how they defined it, was very similar to what Americans define and want for their children. I was able to experience a variety of curriculums, from the Indian curriculum to the British curriculum to Australian, and again, seeing those through lines. So the last part of your question was, is it still relevant? Absolutely. I think it's even more critical. I think I think we're very much at a critical point in understanding what education needs are for the next generation, and it will be probably quite different than what we're accustomed to, what we've seen and experienced as adults.
Amazing. I love that you have those kind of different lenses. I think me personally, I've also was born and brought up in India, stayed in US, lived in China for a long time. I have been seeing the Middle East, like Dubai education.
Yeah.
So I think I also was able to reflect on a lot of different culture, different expectations. And there was definitely a single connecting dot that everyone wants success for their
Sure.
children. And of course, success also means adaptability, future readiness, which was pretty in sync with everyone. Um,
Mm.
and I would definitely dig in more into that inflection point, the critical point that you're talking about. Uh, but would love to know, when you stepped into this the new school, the SK school,
Mhm.
in 21, what was your idea behind it? Like, why did you choose it in the first place? And what is your philosophy about that?
Well, SK was an interesting uh, and experiment to some degree because because SK was a very small school that had a great deal of passion behind it, and for the at that time almost 30 years, um, um, it was again a small school that and essentially was a cooperative model school. It really wasn't a independent school in the true sense of the word, meaning that every so often, every few years, a school would change its trajectory, change its goals, change its vision, as far as or its thrust as far as what it wanted to focus in on, and that really is a cooperative model structure where the parents of the community help run the school, help um, um, determine its direction and focus. And sometimes that focus can be um, every varied year after year. And my task, what I was asked to do, was to take this very passionate group of people, staff and competent people, staff and community, and to really shape it into an independent school, because consistency as far as what you wanted, year after year was in question, because when you have a cooperative model school, you're dependent upon the parents participating through year after year after year. But because it wasn't deemed a cooperative, it was running into this brick wall of how do we get people to come to our school who have to work, or who do not see who do not see their do not see themselves working, sending their child to a co-op school. How do we get them to come if if we don't have a very clear and consistent and transparent vision, right? So my job was to try to bridge that together, to see how to uh, take the best of what was going on, transform it into a traditional independent school, and then and send message that, and then and see when people could come and participate.
Hmm. Okay. That's definitely very interesting because a cooperative school will, of course, have a lot of voices and hence a lot
Yes,
of noise. And then, finding conclusions or making decisions in that lot of voices must be
yes.
hard. So I understand you joined in during this transition to a independent school. So how did you balance that? Like, has it put off the existing parents to a certain degree? And has it been able to attract a new set of parents? Can you give us an idea of how like, is there any recent wins for the school or any challenges that you're still dealing with?
Well, yes and yes. So there was, yeah. There's not going to be a way, particularly if you have a short window of time to
Hmm.
do this, because when you are a small school, you have small resources, and you have the school did not have endowment. It did not have money set aside for um, for the rainy day. And in fact, over the course of its history, it was on the verge of shutting down 4 or 5 times, prior to my even coming back from overseas. So, and that's the reason why there was this desire to bring that change in. So when you're kind of up against the wall, there are going to be people who are going to push back on it or not, because nobody likes change.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing for most people, particularly when it comes to schools, because it's an emotional attachment. It's like you if you're sending your child to a school, you more than likely, particularly independent school, you're more than likely have a devotion to it the way it is, and anytime there's a question of changing it, people don't like that too much. So, but the North Star for me was the goal of the board, and and seeing that this school had phenomenal potential, um, and the focus of making, and my goal was to convey to the parent group, the best of the school will not change. It
Hmm.
is just simply making sure that we're consistent, and we stay on message, and we are consistent with the vision and mission of the school, and we don't fluctuate it. And then we have some accountability measures to make sure that we're consistent in the classroom, and that we market correctly, that we are communicating consistently and thoroughly. So there were some things that needed to be redone or updated, and and most people got it, but there always are going to be people who don't, and that's just part of the transformation process. You're not going to please everybody, and if you're looking for that, if your goal is to make everyone happy and understand and appreciate it, I think you're in the wrong field.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree with that. But did it help? Like, can you give us some examples of win after this transition and
Oh
challenges?
yeah. So what happened was is that we got greater consistency with the parents and the participation. One of the things that happened was that our financial assistance rate dropped like a rock, from 45% to about 16%. It wasn't that we were holding back. We were attracting parents who were seeking out an independent school that they thought would help their children grow and flourish. Not just academically, but socially, emotionally. And so those parents, we started attracting parents with greater means. And also, too, we also attracted a profound diversity. When I first got there, I would say it was about 75, 80% white, as student body. And as of last year, it was about 63, 64% non-white.
Oh, 64%.
Yeah, and it wasn't because we were seeking anyone out in particular. It's just simply because uh, we reckon well, you have to recognize your market. I mean, in Ann Arbor, there's a greater percentage of people internationally, people from different walks of life, different cultures, who simply want an educational experience for their children that they think will bolster them or prepare them for the world unknown. And what we were marketing was that's what we do. And so a greater swath of people were coming. The percentage of people coming from longer distances was increasing, and there were commitment to and a greater commitment to the school, as it was transforming into a full-fledged independent school, preparing children for the 21st century. So that was a huge win, and we also and I'm sure you want to talk about the merger, but one of the things that and I can explain why I brokered that deal, because it just made the most sense for both schools.
Okay. Now, since you brought that up, how was that merger like, and how did it help? Because I read when I was researching that's elementary school, I guess,
Yeah,
had a very different system, and yours was very different. So, how did you bring together them under the same umbrella? Because it's more like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So one of the things that now I will say, let me, for disclosure, I'm not I'm very careful with the word progressive education.
Hmm.
I rarely use it, because when people use those terms, it invokes things that that are biased towards the person listening.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, for example, there's a large swath of people who think progressive education is aligned to progressive politics.
Hmm.
And I don't, they're not. There's nothing further from the truth.
Yeah.
But there's a large people who believe that. And there's also the idea that progressive education has limited or no standards or expectations for student performance. Nothing could be further from the truth in its traditional sense. And so I get nervous using that term. So I rather define what the school is actually doing and not putting a label on it. And so what we focused in on was that uh, we recognized that our student body was changing. Like I said, the clientele, the market was changing for our school, where it was 45% of a financial assistance rate, and that was pretty typical. And the perception was the school would just doles out money for anybody who wants it and may even need it, because it was a co-op structure. You come in and donate. If you donate time and you volunteer in the classroom or you help in the lunchroom, then you can get a nice little package that offsets the cost of the tuition. Well, when our clientele was changing, there was a recognition that these same clients, these same families, were also interested in quite possibly going to the middle school, high school, independent school called Green Hills.
Mm.
And that percentage started increasing because it were parents who were willing to invest in their children from an early age to all the way through. So, and I've been in talks with the with the head of school at Green Hills for years since I've been here,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew that when I first arrived that they were interested in elementary school. They were looking for a building since 2005.
Mm.
And I thought it was just a matter of time for which they would actually acquire them. But as I knew that there was going to be, as I knew that our clients were changing, and these were parents who were more inclined to go to or want to apply to Green Hills as they got older. And as Green Hills was looking for an elementary school building, I said, "Why are we?" Then, to me, the business side of me said it makes only perfect sense to come together because we're talking about the same group of people, and we lived. Our building's facility was 10 minutes away from the actual building of Green Hills, the campus Green Hills, and so it to me made the most sense for the students, the teachers, the families, because a larger percentage of parents were interested going there. So, well, why not come together? And that was a rationale for it behind it.
Hmm. So it does just to clarify for the audience that there was a merger between Green Hills and Summer Knoll. So did you retain the name, or is the name now?
No, the name is going. As of right now, it is. But it eventually is going to become Green Hills Elementary. Yeah, it will be or Green Hill Primary, whatever they decide. Whatever the term will be. But mergers are happening all over the place, and smaller schools are coming together to build up capacity. And sometimes sometimes it's done out of necessity. Sometimes it's done just because it just makes sense. But for Ann Arbor, where we are here, there are not that many independent schools.
Hmm.
There are a lot of faith-based schools, and there's a sizable number of charter schools, but then very few independent schools. And I recognize that unless you're on either coast, you just don't see a whole bunch. Maybe Chicago may be the outlier, but beyond that, there are not that many. So it just kind of made sense to to bring those together. The staff is still there; they're still teaching the same kids. Um, and what we want to make sure was is that how we were teaching complemented what the kids in middle school, and at the Green Hills would how they would do. And from qualitatively, there's no difference.
Hmm. Okay. No, that does make a lot of sense. So now my agenda was, now I have painted a picture in my head about the
Yeah, sure.
overall school that you're currently operating in. So I think now this is the right time to understand more about the topic of discussion today, that the transformation of public and private school. So since
Yeah.
you have a unique viewpoint as a leader, um,
Mhm.
who is guiding a school through a fundamental identity change right now. So, in your view, what is the single biggest challenge of public schools, which they're not prepared for in the next 5 years, and which you guys think can be solved by your school model?
Well, I think public. If you're talking public school, I think I think that hill is a little bit higher, but I do think it really does fundamentally breaks down to um, the. I think there's a recognition and an acknowledgement that what children need today is very different from what we received as children. For children who went through school in the 20th century. However, the measurement we use to determine success is still based upon a 20th century model. It's still
Mhm.
tests. It's still
Yeah.
standardization. We measure child success by how well they do a multiple choice test because we're talking about masses of people.
Hmm.
And teachers and school systems are deter or assess on their success based upon test scores. That's still the structure.
Right.
And I say, I mean, and I understand why. I mean, when you talk about millions of children, I mean, how else are you going to determine?
Exactly.
I mean, but um, and there's a place for that because if we want children to go to university, they're still taking the SAT or ACT. That's still not there's not an adequate um, alternative. And but that's a measurement that is very, very limited. Uh, there's not a depth of understanding or appreciation of learning, um, and it and I think that's the dichotomy of it, and that's where the rub comes in, because I think there's a larger. I mean, I'm sure there's a percentage of public educators, administrators who recognize this is what we're doing and how we're measuring success is not necessarily aligned to what children need for the 21st century.
Hmm.
But we don't have a tool at present
Right.
to measure. They did have one or two, I should say, but they nixed it. It was during when Common Core came out, full blast around the country. There were two assessments. One was called Smarter Balance, and the other one I can't remember the name of it. But when I looked at the assessment itself, it was a much more qualitative, uh, open-ended assessment. It wasn't just regurgitation of information. It wasn't just multiple choice. It
Hmm.
required thinking. It required processing. It required synthesis. But it got nixed because I think for political reasons, because I think as it was just about to go online publicly, uh, states around the country said, nope, we don't want that. And I think because they knew their so-called good schools were not going to do well. And they did not want that political hit. And that's understandable, but I don't know. I'm worried that for children, how are they going to prepare
Hmm.
for to be adaptable, to be flexible, to be creative, to be critical thinkers, how to collaborate.
Mm.
And how do you measure those things, right? To determine how the kids are doing. I think those are the things I think we need to figure out how to measure. And public schools, as well as private schools, need to figure that out as well.
Mm. Yeah, I totally understand the entire story you point out, right? And I totally understand why, apart from the reason that it might make their schools look bad, the performing schools look bad through that new system of analysis and assessment, but it also includes a lot more work at the teacher's end. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I would say which would have taken more time, especially when you're dealing with a class of like 30, 40 kids, and then you are doing it at multiple other classrooms. Of course, AI can do a big role in that. But if I think fundamentally from a first principle, as an employer, when I am hiring someone, or even colleges, when they're giving out admissions,
Yeah.
them the school test scores were just an eligibility criteria, or it was
Mm-hmm.
just one of the parameters for the
Mm-hmm.
hiring metrics, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Sure.
they that's why what became like a trend was students started doing social work, students started doing extracurricular,
Right.
participating in competitions, showing that they had what it takes in them to be employed. From the leadership quality, they're taking out, um, like launching their bands, doing some social enterprise, doing some entrepreneurial things. So the point is that the employer made the students and the universities asked students to start preparing their resumes more holistically. So even if the
Mm-hmm.
schools was not the school test score was not a holistic representation of the child, but the
Right.
resume was their canvas where they had the liberty to make it more and more qualitative of the representation. So
Yeah.
why now? I would say, why is that thing broken, and
Mm.
why does it needs to change the system? I think very fundamentally on that part.
Yeah. So there's a couple things. I think there were, I think particularly in the early 2000s, maybe even late 90s, there was this push to have kids participate in other things. Like there was this, like, you had to do service uh, time, you had to volunteer, and kids were doing it as kind of part of their package, their high school package when it came to graduation. And I think a lot of people kind of got wind of that and recognized, okay, this is just, well, if everybody's doing it, what's the what distinguishes you from anyone else? And so, and I mean, not to say it's not worth doing it, but if the end goal is to prepare or uh, to have you stand out in
Hmm.
a sea of many, I'm not sure if it's actually meeting that criteria. Now,
Hmm.
here's where I do think can happen, but it does require a significant amount of thinking outside the box. Um, the passions, I mean, sorry, the social piece, absolutely important. The civility, the civil responsibility, really
Hmm.
important. All those things should happen. I don't think anyone would question the
Right.
benefits of it. But where I think we've got to get to the next, and this is what I've heard from uh, university recruiters or university people who actually go through transcripts. And I say this: um, what's really important is for a child to know their talents and their passions. Sometimes those are different.
Right.
So, but if you know your passion and you speak to your passion, that's one of the more attractive components that that schools will look at you twice about. My concern about test scores is that I still believe it is a gatekeeper.
Hmm.
If the threshold for, say, NYU is 1450, well, if you're at 1250, will you even be looked at?
Hmm.
I
True.
mean, that's my concern.
Hmm.
I mean, so yeah, it is a component, but sometimes it is the threshold
Yeah.
for people to even be considered. And is it, and should it have that much power? That's a question. I'm not saying I have the answer to that,
Yeah.
but I do think that's a question. So it's again, the dichotomy is that I want children to know their talents. What are you really good
Mm.
at? And then and what are your passions? What are you really, what drives you? When do you get into your flow?
Mm.
Right? Um, and then once we know that, okay, here, this is your flow, this is your talent, this is what you want to do. Now, how do we help you jump the hoops to
Mm.
go to where you want to go? So it's that balance. And I'm not, but I do think it's I think it's virtually impossible to figure that out for 30 kids in the classroom.
Right. No, I think it's fairly possible now with AI. But answering to your question, very well put. It's definitely the threshold which can put a majority of kids out of the race itself. But I think I have another angle to it. Um,
Sure.
that because we run after the core subjects score so much so that the rest of the things, though we know are important, they become just good to have.
Hmm.
So yeah, I totally absolutely on board with the idea that the fundamental concept of schooling with these markings and with the test scores can very well defeat the overall future readiness prospect right now. And of course there are organizations, like I have heard a lot of my friends at Google who don't give like at all any weightage to student scores, but at the same time when you look at their hiring numbers or analysis, it's
Hmm.
majority from Ivy Leagues or from the so whether they will.
So you don't really look at scores when you're hiring from that pool. I mean, it's like, I mean, I give you, if I give you, Kate, two. I want to make agree with you on one thing, and I just want to give one very quick story. Uh, I agree with you. I do think AI is going to be I think AI is going to be a transformational piece, and it'd be interesting. I'm intrigued by the notion that maybe that can provide the fundamentals for
Mhm.
children, where the teacher, the human being, can help shape the creativity, the passions, and the talents of students.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the model. Maybe that's the future model. I don't know, but that's certainly something I think will be explored eventually, and is intriguing in theory to me.
Mm.
Um, the other piece, though, is I remember there's a Justice Scalia when
Sorry.
he did Justice Antonin Scalia. He was Supreme Court Justice. He passed away about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago.
So sorry. Yeah.
And one of the things he said, he was at gave a speech, and one of the things he said was that his best clerk ever, all the decades he was a Supreme Court Justice, was not an uh, Ivy Leaguer. It was a guy from Ohio State. And it was just serendipitous that he was able to get that position because the Supreme Court only picks from Ivy League um, universities. It was just that he just was bequeathed from one justice to another, and he found out that this guy from Ohio State was the best clerk he had ever had. And so that speaks to me with the respect. It speaks to me and says, how much talent are we wasting because of these doors or threshold um, um, these hoops we require kids to jump through, and I think that's I think we really do need to raise that question to ourselves and figuring out what makes the most sense
Right.
moving forward.
Okay. So let's assume that we pivot the entire system of
Mm-hmm.
scores and eligibility for colleges and everything else. Uh,
Sure.
so in that case, what would the school look like? Like, I'm not saying that you have answers or anybody has answers, but we can hypothetically imagine of what would that look like, and how will that what would be the purpose of public or a private or charter or any schooling look like when the test scores is not the goal? And
Mm.
yeah, would love to know your very raw thoughts on that. What it would look like.
Yeah, it would be raw because I because I don't really know. But I would say I think it goes back to, is there? I mean, the schools around the country have, and not just this country, but around the world, they've dabbled in this to some degree. You have Khan Academy. You've got adaptive programs right now that kids are using. Um, several adaptive programs where the fundamentals are taught.
Right.
And if you're going to, if there's no way for public education to reduce class sizes from, to 15 or 12, where many independent schools do, then at the very least, let is there an alternative for the fundamentals to be acquired by students, and where the teacher then can coordinate and uh, put it in, shape the class in ways so kids can explore their passions, their talents, and overcome obstacles and learn how to overcome obstacles. Is there a way to, is there a healthy balance there? I would suspect that it is,
Mhm.
um, um, but it does require different thinking, and it does take risk because we still tend to, particularly in the public policy realm, we don't like to take too many risks, right?
Mhm.
It's kind of like the stock market. We just want things to go even. We just want things to go
Yeah.
steady. And so, but I think for the sake of our children being prepared for what's coming or what's not coming, we're going to have to do something different.
Okay.
Obviously, independent schools can do that much easier because
Mhm.
we're not bound by certain policies necessarily.
Hmm. Okay. And now, since we have talked about the macro concept of
Yeah.
what it look like, is there anything that you want to share from the micro aspect, that things that you are trying to do at your school to stay relevant? As simple as that.
Yeah, I would say there's a couple of things. I think now, okay, going back to independent schools,
Yes.
I think one of the things I have seen when I've met with many heads of schools or many head hunters,
Hmm.
um, is there's still a dearth of heads of schools who don't really have a business sense. They they're and that you really are an educational entrepreneur, and you have to be adaptive,
Hmm.
just like any other business. Um, People are not going to come to school simply based on one's reputation. You're going to get a percentage of people who are going to come for that, but that's not going to save you. So you have to understand and respect the business aspect of an educational institution.
Hmm.
What you need to know how to market in
Yeah.
current form. You need to know where your audience is. You need to know where your potential clients can be, and you're going to have to fundamentally think differently when it comes to fundraising. I think more and more schools are finding it challenging. Even well-heeled schools are finding it more challenging to fundraise, because people are saying, "Look, I'm giving you 30, $40,000 a year. You want more?" Like,
Hmm.
what? So the even though that was standard, um, the I think people are starting to question that now, and I do think a key piece is that no matter what your format or philosophy of schools, what I'm finding is that parents want tangible results,
Hmm.
whatever that means to them, whatever that looks like. They want to know that this was a good investment, however they define that. And I think it behooves a school to make clear, this is what you're going to get. This is what your child will receive while attending here, and this is what they'll be able to do once they leave. And it
Hmm.
needs, and I think that's something that we need to do differently, because I'm finding one of the biggest challenges the schools independent schools are having
Hmm.
right now is that they're saying independent schools talk about individualized learning, compassion, knowing the child, um, a great deal of play. Um, well, guess what? So are public schools saying the same thing. They're using the
Right.
same language. So what's the distinguisher? I mean, how do you distinguish yourself between? I mean, that's just math. If I'm a parent and I see the public school saying this and the private school saying that, well, why would I spend money
Mhm.
if I can get it from over here? So there has to be a very clear distinction between this is what you're going to get here.
Hmm.
This is going to be the outcome here.
Hmm.
And I think that's business. I think you got to say this is what you're going to get if
Right.
you shop here versus over there. Not to disparage anybody, but
Hmm.
simply just make the distinction.
I think I'll give you my peace of mind on this. Till now, there was no competition between private school and public school because the audience was very different. Public school
Hmm.
was audience who wanna send the kids where wanna they get free education. So
Hmm.
hence public schools were always enjoying of not being an entrepreneurial because they knew that certain section of the society is gonna come to them every year
Right.
without any marketing or without even having valid scores. There is no competition as such. Private school was attracting that audience who were looking primarily, who have the money, and also who were primarily looking for distinction in the community aspect. Who I
Hmm.
want my my child to be friends with. I want my child to be friends with a certain section of the society which is economically more stronger. Like
Yeah.
that was as simple as it can be and as honest as can be. But of course things are flipping over now with ESAs coming in where people can have their money and can put that money in public school, private schools, charter schools, anywhere, or homeschooling. So now public school is definitely at a competing end, and so is private school, because
Hmm.
the community aspect which they used to enjoy, the reason why private school parents were sending out, is getting away.
Hmm.
So I think from a fair trade and a open market concept, this is definitely a much better place where everyone will need to innovate uh, to attract the customers. Let's
Right.
put it
I
like
agree with
that.
that.
And I think it's the dismantling of Department of Education at the federal structure is not just random act. I think it's a part of the bigger policy in general, which I believe that because they definitely want to dismantle how 800 or 900 billion odd dollars is being spent every year. And when they can get the same thing done at one third the cost, because they would just put money directly to teachers or directly to the parents. So why not? So every state like Arizona, Florida are like going head on. In
Hmm.
Florida, it's $9,000, which is
Hmm.
a decent amount even for a
Decent amount of money.
private school, right? Arizona is
Yeah.
still 4,000 to $5,000, which might still be not enough for a private school to operate in. Uh, but I think it's also getting more competitive. But yeah, you very well put about the distincting part. Um, so in that aspect, have you guys done anything about AI till now? Like, because I think that's a major distinction right now.
No, because I think no, we haven't, but I do think not directly because we it's society, American society, at least parts of American society, I should say, parts of it. Maybe not so much where you are in San Francisco, but certainly on this side, there's still a disdain for having children, particularly at a young age, use technology because they think they're very concerned about that.
Hmm.
They like that human connection, but I think it's just a matter of time, honestly, that people will start to recognize that this can actually be a benefit. Um, for example, as SK prior to give you an example, SK prior to the COVID, and this is well before I got there. Um, there was a very clear line or clear policy that children from K to 3, I believe, did not touch any type of device of any kind. And I've seen other schools say maybe not as ardent about it, but I have seen schools make that same commitment. Um, but of course, COVID blew that out the water. But then people discovered, oh, wait a minute, we can do all kinds of cool things with technology, even at a young age. We can limit it, we can monitor it, but we still can use it. So I think in time, in the next 5 years, you're going to see more people more open to technology being used in the classroom, even at younger ages.
No, absolutely. And I think the mandates for student to learn AI is still round the corner. I think most schools will have to do something about it for the academic year 26-27. But I think this year is more about capacity building internally, where teachers have to start using AI in their job to be more efficient, to be more productive, and in general more aware about the issues that it might also have from the ethical point of view, because kids are using it anyways, even if they don't have even if they don't have a formal go from the school or formal training from the school. So I think it's very paramount that this is the high time that schools start investing in teachers professional development, because then it might be much more scaffolded way, where teachers are at a much equipped place when they have to decide what AI curriculums to use for students, because they now understand the basics and updated about what's going on. So
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's better. It's always better to be proactive and
yeah,
preemptive. And
no,
I and I
absolutely.
and I it just causes a great deal more strife when you're reacting to a situation versus
Right.
planning it out and scaffolding, as you said.
And especially when you're a small school, I think then you need to be much more proactive, uh, because
Yeah,
it just like every small change can bring so much delta to overall school performance. And that's why I think small organizations are much more agile, should be agile. Uh,
should be. It should be.
uh, so last thing I want to understand is that whenever there's
Sure.
a new innovation, right? So what do you guys try? Like, what's your process? Do you guys think of in-house capacity building, or you do bring in external vendors? How does that work?
It's been both. It depends on the topic. It depends on what, if we're talking about I'll give you an example. Like SK was a when I got there, it prided itself on being a project-based school.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And my discovery was is that the variety the the quality of projects varied widely, and the definition just varied widely. So I thought it was fundamental that we kind of go back to fundamental and make clear what project based learning is. And so I brought in experts who did training for 3 days to just ground us in a base of information. Not to say we have to live there,
Mm-hmm.
but just to say, okay, this is the respected, acknowledged definition, and this is the respected, acknowledged way of doing it. Now we can take it and use it and alter it to our culture and our community, but at least let's start with a baseline. So I do think it depends on what the topic is. If it's fundamental to your, if it's fundamental to your who you are, I think external support or external training can be a good thing. Simply, if it's just to, even if it's simply just to uh, calibrate where you are versus the rest of the world. Um, Now, I also think it's very beneficial to do internal training. I like to, and that's a great way to spark leadership because if you have one or two people do training somewhere on something, and then bring it back to the school and they are the experts in a particular thing. That is a phenomenal way to uh, to also train people in a very internally. So I think it's either, I think both are very well received, but I think it depends on what the topic is and how important it is to the institution.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Perfect. So this has been really helpful, honestly. Last thing that I want to ask you before I let you go, I think I've been taking a lot of time.
No
Uh,
problem.
so, like just like your, like many independent schools are also facing similar struggles. So, is there any
Mhm.
piece of advice that you want to give to another head of school who might be listening to this conversation uh, about enrollment changes or enrollment challenges or anything that they should do that you have learned with the like say over the time?
I would say the two things I would say, and this is, I would say the two things that someone asked me, someone asked me this not too long ago. Uh, so when it came to the transformation of SK and some other places I've worked that needed uh, development, uh, people have asked me, well, why do you say, how can you stay so focused when you have so many factions coming at you from every direction? I said the reason why I said I didn't realize this at the time, but over in reflection, I realized, oh, what I do, kind of my DNA, is that I focus in on what the goal is, and I'm very very clear on my goal. And it's not esoteric, it's not theoretical, it's very concrete. I want this school to be known by everybody in a 50-mile radius. I want X number of children at this grade by this time. I want um, our rating to be at X according to whatever rating. It's very, very fundamental, and it keeps in that North Star keeps me focused. So I would say make your goals super concrete and tangible and measurable, whatever they are. Make them tangible and measurable. And the second thing is, um, an independent school is an institution of learning, but it also is a business, and you
Sorry,
have to.
I didn't catch that. It's
Oh,
a
sorry. Independent school is an institution of learning, but it also is a business,
yeah.
and you have to think like a business person.
Hmm.
I mean, it feels kind of yucky when it comes to education and business. But for some people, it is. I mean, some people they just don't like to merge them, but you're going to have to ensure, because what, like you were saying, legacy of independent schools is slowly but assuredly declining, and it will continue to. You're going to have to know how to market in a much more competitive field, and so business, having some sense of business, is going to be really important.
Hmm. Honestly, I don't think so. It's yucky at all. Even a non-profit has to find revenue streams to keep themselves.
Yeah.
So
No, I agree with you, but I can tell you the large percentage of people I've talked to
yeah, then
have.
school is not for them. And I think then
Yeah.
I think none of the sectors is for them, because even in a public school, if you're not thinking like a businessman or if you're not thinking like an entrepreneur, you won't be able to find fundraising is an art, right?
Yeah,
It's a
100%.
skill. So fundraising through people donation, through campaigning, through private investors, or through revenues, it doesn't matter. As a head of an organization, your first job is to keep your organization financially floating. And
Float.
so yeah, I think that's a good piece of advice. Thank you so much, Jonathan. I think this has been really helpful, and I'm
Thank
really
you.
excited to put this podcast out very soon. This is gonna be very exciting. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. Great to meet you and talk with you.
Same here.
Thanks so
Have a
much.
good day.
Thanks for tuning in. For more information about TomoClub, visit TomoClub or follow us on our socials. Stay curious, keep learning, and we'll